Welcome to Mogul Talk, where wealth and lifestyle converge. We are mindset media dealing with business, social relevance, abundance, lifestyle, and spirituality. This is your time. This is your moment. And this is your host, Ms. Mogul, Charity Smith.
There we go. Hello, America and around the world. This is Charity Smith. I am Miss Mogul. We are in for a treat. This launches our introduction and our series during International Women's Month. I am super excited this month to share profound voices with you about matters that really involve women's leadership, where we're going, where we've been, and how we contribute to the world at large. Today, I have a very special guest, but before I bring her in, I want to let you know that this show is brought to you by Mogul Talk and the Mogul Method. Now, you all know that the Mogul Method is our premier training series where we're taking leaders into quantum leaps of success in business leadership, in cultivating a success culture, in really streamlining your sales processes, and so much more. If you want more information about that, I invite you to go to youcancreateyourown.economy.com. Again, youcancreateyourown.economy.com. Now, I really am excited to host this guest today. I've researched her and followed her for a little while, and I love the message that she has, and I'm excited to share it with you. So let me introduce this sage to all of you. In business and in life, Tracie Jae is the quiet rebel, just the opposite of myself. So I'm really excited to have that conversation. Her work in the world is creating incremental and organic shifts to the status quo using conversations and as instruments of change. She believes that change begins with individuals, couldn't agree more, and is dedicated to supporting humans who want to contribute to a more equitable world, whether it's in their vocation or not. So she's removing excuses. Her proprietary frameworks include 100 Voices, Guided Conversations, and Human-Centered Equity. And she hosts a weekly podcast called Please Make It Make Sense, okay? Without further ado, welcome to the studio, Tracie. Thank you for joining me.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you, Charity.
Listen, the joy and the pleasure are all mine. We kind of discussed this a little bit before we came in. We have not crossed paths in a while, but our first introduction was at the Woman to Woman event. I forgot, was it the African American Museum here in Houston?
It was, HMAC.
Yes, and I had the pleasure of giving a presentation there, and I will never forget the first time I saw your face. I can't remember what I said, but you sat back cool as a cucumber and said, and it was the quiet fire for me. It was quiet fire. I was like, okay, this sister is something altogether different. Okay. So it was just a blessing. From there, I followed your work and the impact that you're making on our world. I want to know, first of all, why the quiet rebel? I've talked about being the lioness and I roar, right? And there's a purpose in the world for that. But the counterbalance to that is the quiet rebel. That's what I believe. Tell me, who is she?
The quiet rebel is a force that you don't notice right away.
She's stealth.
She's stealth.
Okay.
I will, in this moment, liken it to the wind. That is the analogy that I am most inclined to right now. The wind makes a major impact, whether it comes in soft or it comes in fierce. And sometimes we don't give the wind enough credit for the power that it has. And so here we are.
I like that analogy. And, you know, only parents will probably understand this, but there was a cartoon way back in the day, and it was called Avatar the Airbender, The Last Airbender. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that cartoon, but I watched it, oh God, ad nauseum with my daughter.
Okay.
It was essentially where there were elements in the earth. One was the Fire Nation. One was the Water Kingdom. One were the Airbenders, and then the Earth Kingdom. And essentially what their gifts were taking those elements in their environment and being able to bend them in order to either defend their country or their nation or create their country and nation. When you're talking about the wind, that's what I'm hearing. It's the ability to take your strength, your power, and bend it, channel it, hold whatever you need to do to create that element of change. And I love that you use wind because we can liken it either to a breeze that's refreshing, or it can be a hurricane and just clear the place out.
It can clear the place out.
And either way, shift and movement happens. It just depends upon the purpose of the wind in the moment. Am I hearing you?
Absolutely.
I'm liking that. Now listen, the work that you do is important. You also have conversations with thought leaders and with world changers, etc. Another reason why I'm really glad to host you. I want to know though, what was the genesis of that work? Because this kind of space, you don't just arbitrarily haphazard have a cup of coffee and just walk into. Typically, now you correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but typically there is a catalyst. There is a call to this kind of work. And I just am not inclined to believe you just lollygagged into this bad boy. So I want to hear, how did this start for you?
So I think that you may be surprised and others may be surprised to know that this start had nothing to do with where we are. I'm
putting on my glasses so I can hear you now. Do tell.
I actually stumbled into the importance of conversations because I was getting divorced. And I realized how many conversations I had not had.
Oh, that's good.
How many conversations I had not had with my partner and how many conversations I had not had with myself.
That's good.
And we never get answers to questions we don't ask. And so if we start asking more questions, then we will, by default, create a conversation.
I want to make sure I hone in on a point, though, and I'm going to let you continue, but you already know this is going to be a double Dutch conversation.
I'm here for it.
But you said something, I think, in your quiet way that I want to make sure listeners don't miss. The question that goes unasked goes unanswered. And so now that leaves the person typically in a space of assuming something.
Yes.
And probably living in a false narrative, right?
Yes.
Because they don't have the information. And what in the world is the danger? Come on, overstating the obvious. The danger of living in a false narrative. Thinking it's one thing, and it's completely something else. Or it could be something else, but you don't have the information to guide that. So, you know, I tell my audience all the time, get your laptop and your latte, right? And if you're taking notes, that's one to write down. The unasked question is really a missed opportunity. That's what I'm hearing you say.
It is a missed opportunity. It is wasted space, and it is wasted time. And I don't believe in wasting time. I think we've wasted, and I want to be clear about this idea of wasting time too, because really nothing ever gets wasted.
That's good.
But if we spend time doing things unnecessarily because we haven't gotten information, then that can set up a scenario inside of us where we feel like we've wasted our time. We could get to resolution faster if we would ask questions.
Why do you think there's a fear in asking? Because I sense that people may ask the surface question, but what's really down in the, whether it's race relations, whether it's relationship, whether it's policy and government, for some reason there is a fear in truth. You see me leaning and really hearing. Did I lean in on you? I didn't want to take it.
It's okay. It's all good. I'm here.
But why do you think that is?
So I think that people are afraid of asking questions because then the onus is on us to do something with that response. You can go through life with a made up story and continue on your happy way without real information, or you can ask hard questions and get real answers and then do something with that information. But we don't want to do something with that information. We much rather sit in the space of our naivety or our ignorance or our comfort in what we know, rather than take a chance that the thing we hear on the other side of that question will propel us to some action that we don't want to take.
So it's the call to responsibility. So when we ask the question, what I'm hearing you say is when a question is asked, you said the onus is then on us. So that means it calls me to a place of responsibility for the information I now have.
Yes.
And so now I have to decide my response to that. Do I walk it? Do I open door number one or stay behind the, what do we do with this? And I find that I really believe comfortability and the comfort zone is really what's choking us out and really getting to those places that we try to find. And here I am on a tangent, but those places that we try to legislate and the places that we try to march to, or the places that we try to just ignore and hope we'll get there. All of that can be dealt with asking a question. But again, what path do we take with that? There is such a comfort in ignorance, I think.
There is.
Or people think that there is. And so I want to go back to what you were saying about your genesis into this. It started with a divorce.
Yes.
And now you're asking yourself the hard questions. You're asking, pick it up from there.
I am asking myself the hard questions, but I'm also knowing that if I give other people an opportunity to ask themselves questions, that will release them too. So I don't think that I can be liberated alone.
Oh, no, wait. Okay. What do you mean by that?
So I'm fine to ask myself questions and to deal with myself and to move myself to a point of new action. Mm-hmm. But my liberation does me no good if other people are still in shackles.
I get that.
And so I say that I'm like Harriet Tubman's great niece. Like I believe that we are connected somewhere in our DNA.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough for her to get free for herself. She had to go back and get other people and bring them along to freedom with her. And I feel the same way.
Listen, I know you're onto something. We're in a space now, and I find that it's been cultivated by a few things. For me, I believe for women, it started with not just the Me Too movement, but the Stop It's Enough movement. And then we had 2020 Black Lives Matter and just the protests, not just Black Lives Matter, but just the unrest of that. And then you have a pandemic that's already kind of removing more of our surface veneer and our comfortability. And folks are now asking real questions about why am I here? Yeah. For real though. And it's moving outside the comfortability of suburbia, the house, the dog, and the 2 children. People are looking for purpose. And I find that it's these kinds of conversations that provoke us to really evaluate our own humanity, our identity, our purpose in the world, and the space that we're taking. Why are we taking this space, right? And so what we're finding out now is that people are, and I think, originally, I asked the question, why do you think it's difficult for people to ask the hard question? But I think that the environment now is provoking us past our fear. If we're going to find some of the answers now and find out how this whole community, this human community works, we're going to have to ask now, who are you? Who are you? Who are you?
Right.
Who are you? And where in the world do I fit in this whole ecosystem of life? I want to take this first commercial break. When I come back, I'm going to ask you about love, and I'm going to ask you about equity, and I'm going to ask you about shifting and how you are guiding the conversations of humanity in those topics. So you ready for that conversation?
I am ready. And when we come back, I also want to add something about the pandemic.
Cool. We'll be right back. Welcome to Mogul, the place where business, lifestyle, and possibilities collide. Hello, my name is Charity Smith. I'm Miss Mogul. I'm a business leader, global speaker, trusted economic development strategist, media personality, author, advocate, and lioness mom. We're taking you next door and around the world, conversing with business leaders about the news of the day, emerging business trends, and introducing your family to possibilities that will help you live life to its fullest. Listen, we're really excited about our special interest stories where we connect you with authentic faith, spirituality, and abundant thinking. Tune in right here, streaming live on this platform or on a mobile device near you. And listen, don't forget to subscribe to this show and discover the mogul in you. We're excited to connect with you, and we'll see you streaming live right here. Now, before we go into the next segment of our interview, I want to go back to it because you had something that you wanted to add about the pandemic. Before we went to the commercial, I was sharing that I believe that there were several steps that led us to this moment where we no longer have the luxury of fear. And I mentioned the pandemic. So pick it up from there.
Yes. So something I think we take for granted that came to us as a result of the pandemic is silence and stillness. We could have had all the other things happening to us, around us, but because we were still and because we were quiet, we were able to pay attention. And we don't often pay attention. All of these things, inequities towards women and towards people of color, which is a term I despise, but that's neither here nor there, and just systemic injustices abound. They have been here.
Yes.
But during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, we were stationary and sitting in our confined spaces with no place to be. And we had an opportunity to really pay attention.
So, again, and it's funny you bring that up. One of the quotes I've said repeatedly is that for everyone who was listening, the pandemic was a blessing. In all of the chaos that ensued, for those who are truly seeking truth and just seeking, period, the pandemic was a blessing. I love that you bring out that point. We were given the gift of stillness. So now, and because everybody had access to the gift, there was no judgment in saying, wait a minute, I need to stop. I need to reevaluate. I need a moment.
Exactly.
Bring this conversation now into the theme of the month, where we're talking to women leaders about our impact in the world. I want to talk to you about, and it's funny, we just finished the series on our love, right?
Okay.
So tell me about how love and how equity are connected, and then make it specific to women. How do we fit in that conversation of love and equity? Because this is the work you do. I'm curious to hear, what are you discovering in that space?
So I use love in my work as an acronym.
Okay.
And I use a lot of acronyms in my work. That's just part of what I do.
Okay.
But love is listen with your heart, observe your own biases, venture into unfamiliar territory, and expect the best.
Give me a minute. Look, in my church voice, yes! To all of the, prepared for something different, okay? I was prepared for marshmallows, and I don't know why, given that you're on here, that my mind went in that direction. Okay, all y'all write this down. Give us the acronym again. I might pass out again. That's okay. It was that good. Give it to us again. I love that.
Love. Listen with your heart. Observe your own biases.
Come on.
Venture into unfamiliar territory. Expect the best.
Love is a provocation to courage.
Yes.
Ooh.
And to action.
Oh, yeah, that part. So it does no good to be courageous and you never act on it.
Right.
Combine that now with equity. And so let me put on top of the equity piece for women specifically. Let's address now the wage gap. Let's address the wealth gap. Let's address health care. Let's address social impact. How do we use love to address so many of the issues that women are still in the 21st century, still having this ancient, dusty, archaic conversation about equity? But the sad part to me is that it's still relevant.
It is still relevant, and it is sad and frustrating. What I really believe is that we keep approaching things the same way and expecting a different result.
In that insanity.
It is insanity.
Clinical definition of insanity.
That is the definition of insanity.
Come on with me.
And because we again sit in our comfort, right? This is the method that was handed to us, and we believe that eventually it will work, right? At some point we will get to the place where that works, but it hasn't worked. And so at what point do you say, you know what, this ain't working? This ain't working. Maybe we need to try something else. So I suggest trying love, right? So if we start by listening, right, which we don't always do, because most of the time when we're having a conversation, we think it's a debate, right?
We basically just wait to respond.
We wait to respond.
We're really listening. We're waiting for the chance to respond and be right in our own mind. I think the purpose of conversation for many folks is just justification of your own thought.
Yeah, but a conversation is not a competition. And so if we start by learning to listen, actually hearing the people around us, I think that's the first thing. Then the O is observing your own biases. In a lot of equity spaces, we want to talk about unconscious bias, like that's the cure-all, fix-all. And we all have them, and so we should just be appreciative of the fact that we all have them.
It's the voice change for me, but go ahead.
Yes, we do all have biases.
For sure.
However, we don't always own them.
Checkmate.
And so it's not enough to say, yes, I have this bias. But if you know going in that you have a bias, then the onus again is on you to own that, to find a workaround for that, to push past that bias, which leads us to the V, which is to venture into unfamiliar territory. You can't stay over here in your little box where things have just been peachy and wonderful and cute while the whole world is burning down around you.
Willful ignorance. It's called willful ignorance. Yes.
Willful ignorance. I'm going to need you to pick up a bucket or a fire hose or a tablespoon of salt or something.
Come on.
Throw on the fire. You can't just sit over here and watch everything burn and not participate in putting the fire out.
That's good.
Which takes action.
Yes.
And the E, which is a critical part of this, is to go into that expecting that the fire will go out.
Oh, okay. at the end of all of this is a hope of a better resolution.
Absolutely.
I love, and see, what I love about your methodology is that it does not blame, it does not accuse, it does not viciously identify somebody. It simply says, I'm gonna go Michael Jackson, it's the man or the woman in the mirror.
Exactly.
I don't know why I want to break out in that song. I'm talking to the girl in the mirror. Okay, that. Asking her to change, or him, change your ways. No message could have been in the clip. Okay, I'm gonna try to get that. Okay,
you want to make the world the best place. You gotta look yourself and then make a
change.
Yes.
Okay, Michael, we appreciate you. That's essentially what you're saying, though. What I'm hearing you say is this removes then to the notion of accusing and becoming the victim. This removes victimization. It is simply a man or a woman looking at their own ideas, their own biases, their own critical analyses of the world around them, and making some decisions about that and coming into the truth of that. I know for so long we've been waiting for certain conversations to happen, but at the foundation of it is an unwillingness to make change. We legislate year after year, term after term. We talk year after year, term after term. We have symposiums, we have conferences, we have people at microphones pontificating about issues that have been going on for years. But at the root of it is an unwillingness to change. Yeah. And so I think you even talk about action. Love provokes us to action, but I'm going to take that even further. It's not just about action, because over the last 50 years, we've been very busy in these spaces, but it's like a car that's stuck in mud. If it's not truly progressing, it's running and it's spinning all day. What is the outcome of this? And so I'm going to get on my soapbox again. And here is where we probably need to start challenging leaders and legislators and social activists to love. What is the outcome of this? We don't want to march anymore. Our feet hurt. We don't want to have another hashtag. Come on, this is real for me. We don't want another hashtag. We don't want another t-shirt. We don't want to have another conversation on Capitol Hill for the sake of a camera op. What we're looking for is a turn in humanity. Now, I personally believe there is a level of consciousness and faith that a person has to have in order to get to that point. Because at the end of it, you said we have to take this action, believing that once we put out the fire, once we show up and contribute, that the fire will go out. But we have to show up with that faith that the fire will go out. Well, where do we get that faith from? So that's what I'm talking about. Where do we get that from? I'm asking, I want to hear your answer. Where we get that?
So that is a big question, right? This idea of faith, this idea of trusting a higher source, a higher power. And I think for each person, that place is individual. I don't think I can tell you where to find faith. I think it is as it's described in the Bible, the evidence of things hoped for, and the tell me, I'm messing it up.
Something about things hoped for, evidence of things
not seen. Woo.
I put you on the spot.
No, it's okay, because it's a thing that is so like close and personal to my heart. Yeah. That sometimes it's difficult to express. Right. I am a woman of deep faith, not a woman of deep religion.
Got you.
I trust spirit, full stop. Which is a thing that makes me peculiar to some people. And I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
I also trust spirit, full stop, because I have receipts for what trust gets me.
Okay, now my turn. Okay. But see, the reason I asked that question, Tracie, is because again, I get what you're saying with faith being so very personal and so very private and connected to us that sometimes we don't want people in our privacy. How about that? Or just whatever. But I like what you're saying. And the reason I introduced the question is because I believe that love can be so huge and people can think it's so out of reach for them that they don't know how they get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when we know, for me, and again, I'll identify, I believe in Yahweh. So when I need power that's bigger than mine, because I come to the table with power, but when I need power that's bigger than mine to love somebody I know who hates me, love by your definition, to love a system that I know is already or could potentially be rigged in my disadvantage, to sit down and have a conversation with a woman or man I know has a predisposed negative connotation of whatever that's opposite. It may not even be negative. It just may be different. And to be vulnerable enough to have that conversation, sometimes I need power and space and protection that is bigger than me. And so
Yes.
I don't want to miss the role that faith plays in this love, because we can feel so small in this, and we can sometimes think, what can one woman possibly do?
So let me there's a couple of things that are coming up for me based on what you just said.
Okay.
One of them is that sometimes when we look at the problem of inequity, we want to take on the whole big thing at one time.
Yes.
What love allows us to do is take it to the most minute space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because love is an intimate experience. Right? It is one-on-one. It's in small groups. It is one human to the next human. Right? We don't have to try to take on the whole big system at one time. If we could take on one human to one human.
Oh, that's good.
What are you doing? Me, what am I doing today that changes the world for the human next to me? If I can impact the world for the human next to me, and that person is so moved by my love, then they can take that love and use it to change the world of the human next to them. Right? I know it's a big problem. It's been a big problem. But we keep trying to put our arms around the whole big problem.
This is
instead of bringing our arms inward and taking a closer look at who's right next to us. Also, you brought up like having this sort of this confrontational space, right, with the people who we know are against us. Right. And sometimes we do have to do that, but we build that muscle by doing it with people who are a little less against us, people who are just mildly different from us. Right. And there's this thing about difference that I really want to make sure that we hear today.
Yes.
And that is that everyone you know is different from you. We make difference this big, scary thing.
Oh, that's good.
Difference is not a big, scary thing. There is no human in your life who is the same as you are. We are all different.
That's good. That's so
and
good.
So,
look, I'm having a woo-saw. I'm like, yes! But you bring up a point that I think has escaped the conversation. One, this whole notion of starting with your sphere of influence, who's around you. And I like the analogy of building muscle, because that's actually how we build muscle. It's in opposition. If you work out at all, your trainer will tell you to build muscle with using weights and doing something that's in opposition, pulling your weight against another weight or whatever. That's what builds the muscle. And nobody starts out bench pressing 350 and you hadn't been in the gym. Forget 6 months. You know doggone well it's been 6 years. Okay? So you got to start out with the 15s and build your way up.
Yes.
And this notion of difference. I love that you just popped the bubble in that one, because that's kind of been the argument in the space. We don't have anything in common. We can't talk to each other. We can't find a common conversation. And when you were talking about difference being a scary thing, I don't know why I thought about this, but I thought about a fruit bowl. If you really do want a delicious fruit bowl, because I love organic eating, right? You have strawberries and blueberries and mango and bananas and melons and oranges and all of star fruit. You have just this big, beautiful, colorful bowl of various things that have different attributes, different benefits. But when you bring it together, you get a taste that you wouldn't get with just one.
Right.
So I love this idea of dispelling now, taking the venom out of difference. Because we've made difference very venomous, right? Oh, stay away from it. It's different. And, you know, I'm going to throw this out here because I'm this kind of chick and I ain't scared. That's why I'm in independent media and not on place. So when I thought about difference, I also thought about, because of my faith, I thought about Yeshua, Jesus, and all of the Pharisees who used to accuse him of hanging out with the undesirables.
Mm-hmm.
And a quote he gave, he said, and I'm not taking it out of context for all you theologians who probably going to call me after this show, bring it on. I studied. But he did not accuse people who were different. Unless, you know, he already kind of knew their heart. You've got to be a follower of him to know what he means by that. But he said, you know, he hung out with the tax collectors and he hung out with the prostitutes and the thieves and the undesirables of humanity. And the Pharisees and the judgmental folks seemed to ask him, well, why are you hanging out with them? He said, the well don't need a hospital. Now, I'm not calling everybody different sick. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that he put himself in an environment to be a resource, to be accessible, and to have conversations. How in the world are you going to share the best of you, your great ideas, your great experiences, and what you believe your faith is or what works for you, if you won't even have a conversation, if you're too afraid for your narrative to be challenged? If you're too afraid to even, because I think that's a part of it too. We don't want people to start scratching at what we say and digging through what we say we believe, because maybe we're not completely sure of what we believe.
Right.
And so it's the idea of having scrutiny. We don't want to be scrutinized. But again, being bold and being courageous and building this muscle to have the conversations. And not being afraid of having difference around you. Now, see, here's another thing, girl. You got me started. That was so good. Come on, quiet rebel. You all here with a line that you better jump in. You know I can talk. You know I can talk, Tracie. All of this was so good because you have provoked me to thought. You have provoked me to thought.
The wind will do that.
Come, fire and wind love each other. Do you not know that? Fire and wind love each other. And it's funny, you wearing the orange and I'm wearing the green, and our personalities are just like this, but that's a whole different conversation. But I love this idea of being courageous enough to share and to be vulnerable and have scrutiny of thought. Because somewhere in the scrutiny of thought, we can find absolute truths. Right. We can find solutions if we're not afraid of scrutiny. Okay, so I could stay on that all day. I want to ask you, though, about your work. What is DEI, first of all?
So DEI is the term that we use. It's not my acronym. This is the acronym that is used widely. to describe diversity, equity, and inclusion.
DEI. Okay. And so how do we use that to change our spaces?
So I am not a fan of this acronym, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am why is my mind don't want to use words today? Send me word energy.
I hope I didn't just suck it up in my whole pontification.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So rather than DEI, rather than diversity, equity, and inclusion, I prefer human-centered equity. Now, for me, human is also an acronym.
Oh, okay.
Because there's acronyms in my work.
Here's another learning opportunity. I'm here for it. Let's go.
So, human stands for honest, urgent, meaningful, accountable, and nuanced.
Love that. Give it to us again.
Honest, urgent, meaningful, accountable, and nuanced.
How does that differ from what the space is doing now? How does your acronym of human now counterbalance or answer what diversity, equity, and inclusion is trying or attempting to answer?
So I think this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion is remnants of desegregation.
Take us to school.
And so in the 60s, when we were trying to move people into spaces where they could coexist, we did not do that with any degree of nuance. We said, we're going to put Black people in spaces where there are only white people and just let everybody figure it out.
Come on, look, can we say chaos?
Honey, chaos, not even the controlled chaos, right? Just straight up chaos. And what I'm seeing in the DEI space, in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, feels very much like that. It is, we have this dominant culture, and we want to bring in people from a non-dominant culture into our space. Now, culture could be anything. It could be skin color. It could be socioeconomic. It could be religion. It could be whatever culture means in that space, right? But if we have a dominant culture and suddenly we want to diversify that space and we start inviting people in who are unlike the dominant culture and just letting things work themselves out, that feels very much like desegregation to me. As opposed to changing the expected outcome of creating space for the others to creating a space where all humans are welcome. And then doing what it takes to make sure that all humans are welcome in that space, regardless of what the other is, because we're all different.
You're hitting on something though. So the psychology though, the mental aftermath of this kind of meshing, this clashing of culture, language, identity, space, economics, behavior together with no rules of engagement. Just the whole picture of that is very explosive to me. Why do you think after all these years, we have not moved away from the psychology of that? Because from what you're saying, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, still has the same model. There aren't any new tools or new psychology, new paradigms in play. We have the veneer of acceptance by having various faces at the table, but even the faces have the same narrative many times.
Yes.
And so why do you think it is that the psychology, the mindset of all of that has not moved into the human space that you define? Now, I'm going to throw my predisposed answer in there, but I want to hear your thought. I personally believe that it's hard sometimes for people to see humanity that doesn't look like them.
Absolutely.
Your humanity doesn't look like my humanity, so we're not going to call that human, that we're just going to call that alive. But humanity demands a certain level of equity.
Yes, absolutely.
So what's the mindset? What's the psychology behind all of that? Why haven't we moved from those old paradigms as much?
Yeah, I'm glad you said as much, because I don't want to at all suggest that there aren't other people in the space trying to disrupt that narrative. Mm-hmm. Right? There are leaders in spaces of specifically anti-racism, which is a disruption to that DEI notion. Yes. There are a number of other schools of thought, and also this DEI acronym continues to grow as people try to decide what they actually mean when they say DEI. Right? I've seen DEI J, which would be justice. I've seen DEI B, which is belonging. I've seen DEI A, which is access. Like, we wanna create space where people have access, where people feel like they belong, where there is justice, where there is equity. But we just keep like putting band-aids on stuff instead of just digging the whole thing up and starting over. Right? We are in a wounded America. Right? And I like this, that I use this acronym of wounds pretty often. We are in a wounded America with a big gaping wound, not a little scratch or a little cut that you can put a band-aid on and maybe it'll heal over time. This is a big gaping wound. And when you have a big gaping wound, you have to clean it out. You have to disinfect it. You have to medicate it. You have to give it air and space to breathe, so that it closes over time.
In a healthy way.
In a healthy way. But we have not been packing this wound or cleaning it out, or we've been putting little tiny band-aids around the edges of the wound for years.
And I'm going to make a really gross analogy, but this situation I think calls for it. When you think about a wound that has not properly been covered, sometimes what you call the remedy can get swallowed into the wound.
Absolutely.
Because it's inadequate.
Absolutely.
Because the covering is inadequate, and then there's further damage that happens to the wound. And what America...
Because your body tries to reject it. Your body wants to reject it.
And haven't we seen the body of America reject many of the notions that have been posed as solutions? It's because America has not had the come to Jesus meeting, as we like to say, in around the dinner table and around the greens. You need to come to Jesus meeting to really deal with what's at the root of this. And we don't want to talk the R word because people, like, oh God, this again. Well, it keeps coming up because it hasn't been addressed. What is humanity? And I think the reason why, again, we're coming up with all of the various acronyms for D this and D that and D this, that, and the other. And, that's not my space. So da 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 da.
Yes, yes.
It's because we won't deal with humanity.
Yes, which is why I want to put human first, right? That is why it is human-centered equity. And the acronym HUMAN speaks to the how and not the who.
Oh, okay. So now it's the us versus them is removed. Oh, I'm loving that. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the how and not the who. Mm-hmm. We are not honest. So there's the H, right? We are not honest. We know that we are not honest because there are still people in spaces today, right now in 2020, that want to keep us from teaching history the way history happened.
Did you see me?
We can both lean in together.
Okay. Yes, that part. Please continue.
So we have to start with being honest in all of our spaces about who we are, about who other people around us are, about how those two things interact.
Yeah.
We have to be honest. Urgent. Urgency is internal and not external. We responded. No, we didn't respond. We reacted when George Floyd was murdered. We took a full stop. Everybody in the country was like, oh my God, we're racist. Look at us. Look at our country. But the George Floyd's murder was not new. That wasn't a new occurrence. So we reacted. That's not urgent. That's hurried. That's rushed. That's not
There's
urgent.
a difference.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
When we know a thing is urgent, we act on it without being provoked. And so centering humans and human-centered equity has to come from a place of urgency.
Yes.
Meaningful. Another thing that happened, and we have this great examples that came out of the murder of George Floyd that helps us tell a story that most of us have some current context for, right? So one of the things that happened was that we had a bunch of people putting up black squares on social media. Please tell me how that's meaningful. Now, the people who originated that had a meaning behind it. But just like many other things that happen in our current society, it got co-opted and then it lost its meaning. And so if we are going to take actions to make sure spaces are equitable, they have to be meaningful. We cannot keep putting Band-Aids on open wounds.
This is so good.
And then the A is accountable, right? We have to hold one another and ourselves accountable for the things we agree to in an equitable space. And when we are doing things that create inequity, someone has to be held accountable for that, which we don't do on a personal level. We don't do it on a family level. We don't do it on a corporate level. And we absolutely have not done it on a national level. And so we have to increase our level of accountability.
That is so good.
And the N is nuanced, right? When we start talking about equity, there's a lot of people who have felt slighted in our country, right? And so to speak about the inequities that women face, for instance, and then to speak side by side with the inequities that Indigenous and Black people have faced, is a nuanced conversation.
So true. So true.
And we can't keep approaching people like they all fit the same mold.
Okay. So this could go into a series, and I see several other conversations in this I want to have with you. I want to take a very quick commercial break. When I come back, I think shift may be the answer to the nuance. I'm just anticipating that it is. When we come back from this break, I want you to talk to us now. How do we shift, according to you? How do we shift ourselves now into resolution, into courage and action mode to start now changing the world around us, as you would say, one human at a time? That's the conversation I want to have very quickly when we come back.
All right.
Are you ready to break out and break through? Wait no longer. Charity Smith, known as Ms. Mogul, has created a breakthrough course and mastermind called the Mogul Method for multidimensional leaders wanting to harness their creative power and release their next big idea, transforming their performances, culture, and leadership. A highly sought-after media personality, business and transformative leader, Ms. Mogul enraptures her audience, taking them on a journey of personal and performance discovery with laughter, candor, a biting wit, and over 20 years of business acumen and leadership. Go to www.youcancreateyourown.economy.com now to awaken the mogul in you.
So we're back for the final leg of the interview. Tracie, before we get to that, though, I want to tell you, I have been provoked to more action. You have given me so much to think about in this conversation. And what I really hope is that those who are listening are hearing these jewels and these nuggets and really doing some self-evaluation about what change and what impact we're going to make in the world. If we're going to have a world at all, it's going to be us as the stewards of it. So in closing, talk to us about now, what is shift? How do we get into, because these are a lot of paradigms here that we're leaving. If we're going to adopt a more solution-based, a more human-centered approach to change, to equity, to all of the social ills that we've talked about, there has to be some movement from one space to another. First, I'm going to say first spiritually, then intellectually, and then my body got to get engaged. I've got to act on this information. How do we shift from one paradigm to another?
So SHIFT is the final acronym I will leave you with.
Come on with your acronyms.
And I spell SHIFT with a Y, SHYFT.
Yes.
See how you feel today. See how you function tomorrow. So there's a shift, right? We're starting with how we feel in this moment. And we're examining everything that's in there. Who we are, how we came to be who we are, our outlook on the world, why we think the world is the way the world is, our place in it, our actions and inactions, how we feel. And as we examine those things, it's going to influence how we function tomorrow. If we continue to feel the same way, we will continue to function the same way. But when we shift our feelings, we shift our function. And when we shift our function, we shift our feelings. And so it is this continuous cycle. It is cyclical, but it starts with action.
That's good.
Right? Actually, it starts with intention, and then it starts with silence and asking, and then there's action.
Very
and
good.
When we make an action, when we take an action toward the goal that we've set, which in this case, let's say, is equity, even within our own bubble, right? Am I making equitable choices in the space where I live? And if the answer to that is no, what will you do differently tomorrow or later today? What will you do differently later today so that your answer next time will be yes?
That's good.
And so that's the shift. Oh, it is. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
See how you feel
today.
See how you function tomorrow.
Love that. Love that. And I love also that all of the responsibility, all of the reflection, all of the asking starts here. It's nobody else's responsibility, nobody else's task. I can't shift this to somebody else.
No.
This is
and I can't shift another person, right? I can't make you do anything. My father would say, you can only control the fool driving your own car. I can't.
Come on, Papa. That's good. That's good.
You don't get to control the shifts in somebody else's vehicle either. You can only control your own shift. Own your own shift. Now, I can help navigate you through the shift. We can talk about the shift, but the shifting is on you.
That's good. That's good. How do people find you and connect with you in your work?
The easiest way to find me is on my website, which is quietrebellife.com.
Mm-hmm. One more time.
quietrebellife.com.
And there, I'm sure your courses, your events, your contact information, speakers, podcast information, everything is in that hub.
It is
quietrebellife.com.
Yes.
Wonderful. Tracie, as if I needed more fire, you poured gasoline. Yes.
I blew some wind on it. I blew some wind on it.
I'm coming with your wind. I'm coming with your wind. It has been enlightening. It's been refreshing. But more than anything, it has been provoking. In your quiet way, you poke the bear. Let's have the conversation. I love your approach to change, to humanity, and to guiding the conversations now that we so desperately need to have. And I think finally we're getting to a space where we're ready to have the tough conversations. I'm glad that you're one of the sages in this space who's guiding carefully the narrative about how we get from this paradigm and this shift to the one that we truly, truly seek. Thank you again for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been my pleasure. It's been my pleasure. So thank you to our guests, and thank all of you for joining me for this conversation in Mogul Talk. So no, we didn't necessarily talk business, but as you all know, I'm into intentionality and thought. I don't want this International Women's Month to just be another one of rehearsing some of the same narratives and the same conversations. If we are truly serious about the condition of our world and our humanity and our space in that world, now is the time to sit down and have some tough conversations. But I promise you, as our guest has shared today, hope is at the end of the conversation. You just need to have the courage and the action, the intention at the beginning. Thank you again to my guests. Thank all of you for watching. Stay tuned. We have another show coming up real soon. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for watching. Connect with us on our fan page on Facebook, Master Your Morning with Ms. Mogul, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mogul Life TV. And visit our website, youcancreateyourown economy.com and mommiescreatingeconomies.com.